The first time I felt the weight of my life change was on a Tuesday. After 7 years at Crescent Media, I had established a modest but steady niche for myself. I didn't mind that I wasn't the company's star. As a content strategist, I played a significant role and took pride in my job. I oversaw the creative team, managed the editorial calendar, and ensured that our client campaigns ran smoothly. I was dependable, consistent, and someone they could rely on. However, everything changed on that day, until this morning. I was the chief content strategist at Crescent Media, a company renowned for its creative digital marketing. My name is Avery Davis, and I'm 34 years old. My phone rang as I was finishing up the second draft of a proposal for our largest client. I was invited to visit Rachel's office, who works in human resources. A flutter went through my tummy. Although I had no cause for concern, I had a hunch that this would not be another standard check-in. Rachel was already in the office with Ben, the director of operations, when I arrived. Even though I had worked with both of them for years, it was more difficult to read their looks now. Rachel didn't have her customary smile, but Ben's eyes were never fully in contact with me as he fidgeted with a pen. With an unexpectedly official tone, Rachel remarked, "Sit down, Avery." Confused, but ready for whatever lay ahead, I sat down. With a steady yet icy tone, Rachel said, "Avery, we've received a lot of comments on your previous performance. Clients have repeatedly complained about confusing communication and missing deadlines." I blinked as I tried to take it in. I had reviewed each client proposal twice. I had always ensured that the work was completed. Even though things were tight, have you missed any deadlines? My voice trembled a little as I asked, "Which ones?" Before he spoke, Ben cleared his throat. "Avery, it's not just about the deadlines. The work has been erratic. We've noticed that you've been working less lately, and some of the clients are doubting the caliber of the content. Less work. I had given this business my all. I worked late every hour. I made sacrifices every weekend. I had tried my hardest to keep the ship afloat, and suddenly, I found myself hearing that I was not meeting expectations. I was unsure of how to react. The ground seemed to be vanishing beneath me. I tried to remember every discussion and every deadline while my mind raced. I was unable to recall ever disappointing anyone, I said, attempting to maintain my composure. "I don't understand. What do you say? Are you going to fire me?" Rachel took a while to respond. Before she spoke, I could see the answer in her eyes as she looked at Ben and then back at me. She whispered, "We're letting you go, Avery, effective right away. We have already made arrangements for the packing of your belongings. Right present, we are only able to provide a severance payout." I felt like I was punched in the gut by the words. The room briefly swirled, and my hands became numb. The weight of everything that was abruptly collapsing felt like it was suffocating me. "I don't understand," I said again, gasping for air. "Why?" Ben stirred uneasily. "Concerns have been raised regarding your compatibility with the corporate culture. Someone who can keep up with the speed is what we need. Someone who can consistently deliver outcomes is what we need." With the sting of their comments still fresh in my mind, I nodded slowly. "Insufficient. Not quick enough. No, it's not enough." I refrained from arguing. I refrained from crying. Numb. I got up and gathered my belongings, including my coffee mug, notebooks, and the plant I had been attempting to maintain for a year. I felt the weight of everything I had worked so hard to build over the past 7 years suddenly crumble as I left that office. I had no position at Crescent Media, which I had assumed would be my career home. With my head whirling, I ventured out into the parking lot. I was no longer a part of the city, which was nevertheless vibrant and alive. I merely sat there for a while, inhaling. After getting into my automobile, I was unsure about how to feel. I had no idea what to do next. I had lost more than simply my job. It was the sensation of erasure, as if all of my hard work, late nights, and projects that I had given up my personal life for were in vain. I made no phone calls, not my relatives, not my pals. I just got home by car. The following morning, I felt as though I hadn't slept at all. My thoughts continued to replay yesterday's occurrences. I had heard the words, "We're letting you go," Avery far too often, and each time they replayed in my mind, the pain got worse. I felt the weight of everything bearing down on me as I struggled out of bed. Today, there was no rush, no gatherings, no due dates, just silence. Breathing became difficult as it sank in your chest. I had always felt at home in my flat, but today it seemed frigid. Up until now, I hadn't given it much consideration, but it felt like every furniture piece and corner was mocking me. All I have left is this. I opened my laptop and took a seat at my kitchen table. I wanted anything at all, to take my mind off the nagging sense of failure. I read my emails, but they served just as a reminder of my former existence. Promotions, social invitations, and work assignments. Everything is now irrelevant. I scrolled aimlessly through the news while staring at the screen. Then I noticed it, an email from a former Crescent Media coworker. Hey Avery, I understand that you've been dealing with some difficult situations. I was informed of the events. I wanted to see how you were doing and to check in. Tell me if you would like to speak. Despite their simplicity, her comments came as a relief to me. Someone took notice. Someone was concerned. I looked at my phone for a while, unsure whether or not to answer. Sarah and I hadn't spoken in months. I became overly busy after I was promoted. We floated. However, I became acutely aware of how much I had missed that connection. A genuine relationship. I tapped a response out. I'm all right, Sarah. I appreciate you checking in. Just working things out at the moment. I had no idea why I had said that. All right. But I wasn't. I was uncertain about what to do next and felt as though I was perched on a precipice. I was looking at the phone that afternoon. Something prevented me from calling my mother or my closest friend. Perhaps the embarrassment was the cause. Perhaps it was the embarrassment of not knowing how to respond to their question. What happened? I was unsure of what to say to them. What could I say about what had just transpired? Then there was the question that kept coming up. Why did they fire me? At Crescent Media, I wasn't the most gifted employee, but I was dependable. I was committed. I pushed the team forward and worked late. I was concerned. Then why was I being treated as though I had been a waste of time? Something didn't add up, and I couldn't get rid of it. As I gave it more thinking, I came to the conclusion that they were all too eager to let me leave. I was too quick to forget what I had done for the business. There was a problem. Furthermore, I couldn't ignore it. The days that followed were characterized by a continual oscillation between shock and numbness. In reality, I had done everything I could have, but I spent hours considering what I could have done differently. Simply put, I was unaware of how much control I was ceding to them, but then I realized that I was no longer bound by their rules. I started making the calls at that point. I started by contacting Rick, my former supervisor. It was he who had initially brought me on board at Crescent Media. I trusted him since he had always been a mentor to me. When he picked up the phone, I said, Rick, I need to talk to you. Naturally. Avery, what's happening? His tone was kind and sincere. I was let go, I said, my voice sounding almost unnatural. A long pause ensued. What? Why? One of the most dependable individuals we have ever had is you. I inhaled deeply. That's what I also thought. However, they informed me that I was no longer a good match for the organization. They claimed that I didn't perform well enough. Without hesitation, Rick said. That's bullshit. I don't believe it. One of the greatest has always been you. No one ever asked you to accomplish more than you have. I listened to what he had to say. I sensed something sparking for the first time in days. It was the start of something, but it wasn't hope yet. I wasn't only a victim of someone else's game. Rick, I need your assistance. I have to know what's actually happening. Something doesn't feel right. His voice was firm as he said, I'll investigate. Avery, I've got your back. We will resolve this. I had my phone in front of me as I sat at my kitchen table later that evening. Rick was going to investigate. He was honest, and I knew that he was the one with the connections to find out the truth. However, I still needed to keep going. I couldn't wait for someone else to take care of it. I started writing an email to a lawyer I had been in touch with a few months prior, in case I ever needed one, not to anyone at Crescent Media. After a moment of hesitation, I clicked submit. It felt like a line I couldn't go back over, and it was a step into uncharted terrain. However, I knew there was no turning back once I submitted it. The following few hours passed quickly, and I had a peculiar sensation of relief when I finally lay down in bed. Not by any means was it over. However, I had started down a different path. I no longer felt helpless. The days that followed blended together. The uncertainty that hung over me left me unsure of what to do. I couldn't just sit around doing nothing, so I spent my time thinking, researching, and waiting for Rick to show up. I had to do something. I started researching Crescent Media's corporate structure. What had actually been going on in the background? What made me suddenly disposable? I went through performance appraisals, internal memoranda, and historical reports. The documentation looked regular, with nothing particularly noteworthy. Until I discovered it. I discovered something late one evening hidden in a folder on the shared drive of the business. Although it was an old project report that I hadn't worked on, there was an odd note in it. Pending team members' reevaluation. Avery Davis is under consideration as a replacement. The remarks were like a kick to the stomach. My heartbeat accelerated as I gazed at the television. It was this. Long before I made any blunders, they had already decided. Long before I even sent that email, they were preparing to replace me. So I wasn't the issue. Feeling the weight of it all fall on me, I reclined in my chair. This was more than a simple error. It was about someone who didn't care about my performance and wanted me gone. I was startled out of my reverie as my phone buzzed on the table. Rick was the one. With a steady yet anxious tone, he said, "I have some information for you. Come see me in the morning, 10 a.m. Don't bring anybody along." My heart was thumping hard in my chest. What's happening? Let's just say, I can't say too much right now. Not everything is as it seems. Avery, be there. It's crucial. I met Rick at a peaceful downtown cafe early the following morning, except for the occasional person sitting by themselves, engrossed in a book or a laptop. The place was largely deserted. Rick was already seated at a corner table, looking out at the street with his fingers encircling a coffee cup. When I went in, his expression was unreadable as he looked up. Across from him, I took a seat, my hands clammy. "What did you discover?" I asked, attempting to speak steadily. Rick lowered his voice and leaned in a little. "You underestimate how bad it is. Avery, it's not just about how you performed. This is a larger picture." Confused, I scowled. "What are you saying?" He took out a file from his briefcase. A pile of emails, notes, and some financial documents were found within. I felt sick to my stomach as I looked at the top one. "This is a document that illustrates what has actually been happening," Rick added. "This entire situation has been planned by Operations Chief Clarissa. Behind the scenes, she has been stealing company funds, tampering with projects, and firing employees. She has done this to other people than you." My thoughts were racing. So it's not only about me losing my job. No, it's a lot larger. To maintain her position and authority, Clarissa has been conducting a covert operation. To maintain her position, she has been manipulating the books and hiding fraud. You were too close to the truth. Thus, she wanted you out. The ground underneath me shifted. Now, it was all beginning to make sense. The way she dismissed me and was so eager to hold me accountable for mistakes that weren't mine. It was about control, not about my job. Neither the team nor the business mattered to her. She was concerned about holding on. "I can't do much more than this," Rick said, sliding the documents across the table to me. "But, Avery, I'm sharing what I have with you. This is your opportunity to fight back if you're serious about it." A wave of resolve swept through me. I had to defend myself. Regaining my job wasn't the only goal of this. It was about bringing the truth to light and dismantling a system that had been flawed for too long. However, I was aware that this would not be simple. Rick was correct. Clarissa had done a good job of hiding her identity. I had to play the game on her level if I wanted to defeat her, and that required more investigation. It required locating the proof she hadn't concealed. After carefully folding the papers, I tucked them into my bag. I'll require more, without some concrete evidence. I can't just stroll in and start pointing fingers. Rick gave a nod. "I understand. I will continue to dig, but for the time being, you must remain low. Nobody in the office is trustworthy." They all support her. The days that followed were a haze of desperate phone calls and scouring. I went through all of Crescent Media's internal documents. I talked to a few reliable coworkers who had collaborated with me in the past and had not yet been tainted by Clarissa's rule. I had to try, but I couldn't trust everyone. I was looking through emails one afternoon when I noticed something. Clarissa and a higher-up in the finance department exchanged an encrypted message. After carefully deciphering the message, I understood its meaning. She had been using business funds to settle personal bills. She had been hiding her identity by exploiting the company's resources. This information was more than enough to keep me going, even though I wasn't sure what to do with it yet. The parts of the puzzle were starting to fit together. I now had the evidence that Clarissa had been deceiving everyone, manipulating strings, and covering up her errors. That evening, I gave Rick a call. I possess it. I possess the proof. Eleanor called the following day. She had been collecting everything we required in collaboration with the legal staff. The lawsuit was prepared. Our move was on the horizon. One thing, though, was evident as we readied ourselves for the conflict. It wasn't just about me. It was about all the people Clarissa had attempted to crush during her journey. I also refused to let her win. There was a lot of preparation in the days before the lawsuit was filed. I had gathered everything Eleanor and I would need: the financial disparities, the emails, and the notes. Everything was arranged like a map, and I could see the way ahead clear, scary, but confined. The truth, however, felt like a huge weight bearing down on me despite everything being in order. My gut wrenched every time I considered what was about to happen. Regaining my career and eliminating Clarissa weren't the only goals of this. Justice was at issue. About shedding light on a system that has allowed individuals like Brian, Henry, and me to be sucked up and thrown out. And it was about making everyone face the truth of what had been happening for so long behind closed doors. However, the risks increased with each step ahead. I wasn't in the mood to celebrate the morning we filed the lawsuit. I didn't think I had won. I felt as though I had just struck a match in a gasoline-filled room. Never before had the stakes been so high. The legal staff was constantly checking that all the paperwork was in place and that every little detail was covered. We filed claims of retaliation, corporate fraud, and wrongful termination. We also included evidence of Clarissa's misuse of corporate resources, including her use of her position to conceal past errors, manipulate the records, and pay off personal obligations to make it even more damaging. I was going to make sure that everyone knew the unpleasant reality. The world seemed to stop when the news release was issued. I had no idea what was going to happen next. Would they pursue me? Would they try to keep me quiet once more? Or would they be made to listen at last? I was surprised by how quickly I received the response. In a public statement, the corporation used the standard corporate jargon to say that they were fully cooperating with authorities and that the legal matters would be resolved internally. They were obviously in damage control mode, though. Clarissa's absence was a powerful statement. She had not yet been covered by the media, but I knew that would change quickly. The truth was going to catch up with her, and her name was in the case. A few days later, my phone buzzed when I was at home, attempting to concentrate on something other than the legal mess at my desk. It was an Ava text. "I must speak with you. It is urgent." I didn't think twice. I gave her a call right away. What took place? My voice was tight with worry as I asked. Her voice was shaking as she continued. "I think they're coming for me. I believe they are aware that I assisted you. I have been hearing rumors. Oddities. People are whispering. Avery, they are aware. They are aware of my actions." I inhaled deeply while attempting to remain composed. "You made the correct decision. Ava, if you are telling the truth, they cannot touch you." "I'm afraid," she said. I'm not sure what to do. I tried to collect my thoughts by leaning back in my chair. It was no longer just about me. This concerned all of the people who had been entangled in Clarissa's web, all of the people she had utilized and then thrown away when they were no longer needed. Furthermore, Ava was as much of a target as I had been. "You don't say anything, Ava. Don't tell anyone else anything more. The facts are on our side. We cannot let them take that away from us." Ava took a while to respond, and for a while, the only sound I could hear was the static on the phone line. Then she spoke once more, this time in a calm tone. "Avery, I'm with you even if I'm afraid. All the way." The burden was being relieved from my chest. Ava was no longer merely an intern. She was an ally, someone who understood the stakes and had witnessed what I had. Legal meetings, document checks, and more late-night talks with Eleanor filled the next weeks. But one thing remained constant throughout: we were winning. Gradually, we were dismantling their fortifications. More people started to speak up as Clarissa's meticulously built empire started to fall apart. Behind the scenes, Rick had been gathering more proof and speaking with former workers. Gradually, we had developed an irrefutable argument. Then everything changed one morning. Eleanor sent me an email when I woke up. Settlement offer was the subject line. With my pulse pounding, I hurriedly opened it. "A settlement has been proposed to us. Avery, they wish to resolve things amicably. They will cleanse your identity in public and offer you a hefty reward. I lost my train of thought. A compromise. Were they attempting to defraud me? I gave Eleanor a call right away. What's happening? She stated calmly but with a hint of delight. They're panicking. They want to put an end to this without the public realizing how corrupt they have become. They are aware of their failure. However, they're hoping you'll just accept the money and leave. I tried to take it all in as I sat there with the phone to my ear. The offer, the cash, the opportunity to leave. It was alluring. It didn't feel right, though. The reward wasn't why I was involved. I wanted to know the truth. No, I firmly answered. I refuse to accept their money. I will see this through to the end. Eleanor made a snap decision. All right, you wouldn't done in my opinion. Avery. Let's get this done. We are so near. Only a few days later was the last hearing. Lawyers, reporters, and business representatives crowded the courtroom. It was more than I had anticipated. However, I wasn't scared this time. I was prepared. With solid hands and a firm voice, I mounted the stand. Every detail, every falsehood, every manipulation, I said it like it was. I didn't hold back. And the tide had fully changed by the end of the day. The following morning, Clarissa's name appeared in every newspaper. People started to doubt everything, and the company's stock suffered. The best thing, though, Clarissa had left, outside the business, out of the sector. Her kingdom had fallen apart. What about me? I was more than a mere survival. I used to fight. And at last, the truth had prevailed. I felt as though the earth had changed beneath my feet in the days following the last hearing. Clarissa had left. The business was in disarray. The facade was finally beginning to show its fractures to the public. I still had a long way to go, though, even though the combat was finished. I had no idea what would happen next. The truth had come to light because I had stood up for it. But for me, what did that mean? Would everything return to normal? Was I simply meant to pick up the pieces and go on with my life? After everything had calmed down, the first few days were a mixture of relief and tiredness. I was by myself much of the time, thinking about all that had transpired. It wasn't only that. It was the knowledge that I had defended myself in a manner I never would have imagined. I spoke with old acquaintances on the phone for hours on end, making up for lost time and re-establishing contact with those I had neglected throughout the commotion. When the press release was released, Sarah was among the first persons to get in touch. I always knew you had it in you, Avery, she stated over the phone. You have demonstrated to us all the true meaning of standing up for what is right. Despite my sad heart, I grinned. I said, without you, I couldn't have done it. We all worked together on it. Without the help, I would not have been able to continue. A week later, I was seated at a cafe that I frequently visited during my time at Crescent Media. Returning to a location that was both familiar and unfamiliar felt odd. I was no longer merely a cog in the corporate gearbox. Once more, I was a person. Despite my fear of beginning anew, I came to the realization that I was in charge of my life more than I ever gave myself credit for. Once more, my phone buzzed. It was Rick's message this time. The text said, Avery, I've been talking to some people. Global Creative has an opportunity. They're trying to find someone with your experience. This might be the new beginning you require. I spent a lot of time looking at the message. I hadn't even considered returning to the business sector. Not quite yet. However, something about it felt natural. Perhaps it had nothing to do with turning back. Perhaps it was about using what I had discovered and continuing in a way that felt true to who I was at the time. I immediately called Rick, I answered. Tell me more. With a glimmer of optimism in my chest, the following week was set aside for the interview with Global Creative. Even though it was informal, I could tell they had done their research. They were aware of every detail about me, even my flaws and the real reason I quit Crescent Media. Jessica, the hiring manager, was kind yet straightforward. We're trying to find someone who can assist us in creating something new, a visionary, someone who challenges the established quo and asks questions without fear. I was immediately struck by what she said, and I knew that this was it. I needed a change like this. I didn't intend to merely walk into another corporate position. Instead of merely following the road that others had outlined, I was going to take on a role that would allow me to influence the future. I knew deep down that this was the next chapter by the time I left the interview. It was my destiny to be here. I received the call a few days later. I accepted the offer of employment with Global Creative. It was a fresh start, not just a job, an opportunity to create something honorable that I could take pride in. The months that followed flew by. I threw myself into my new position at Crescent Media, taking on tasks I never would have thought possible. More significantly, I completed it according to my own conditions. I wasn't only a cog in the wheel, I was in charge. I was guiding the company's course, fostering its expansion, and above all, establishing an atmosphere at work that cherished integrity, ingenuity, and the individuals who made it all possible. All of this taught me a valuable lesson. It's never too late to change your course. The most difficult times in your life might occasionally serve as the most significant turning points, and you discover that you are more capable than you ever imagined when you stand up for what is right, even when it is frightening. I sat on my balcony one evening after a long day at work and watched the sunset. I came to a significant realization as I reflected on everything I had gone through, including the firing, the struggle for justice, and the fear of the unknown. It wasn't only that I got my job back. My life was mine again, and I was in charge this time. I couldn't help but smile as I sat there and enjoyed the nice breeze. I had stood up for what was right, and I was living it now. Sometimes it seems like everything you've worked for could be taken away in a second since life is full of unexpected turns. In actuality, though, the most trying times frequently bring out our hidden strength. Real change starts when you speak up for what's right and don't let other people determine your value. You can change your story at any time. It's never too late to take back your voice. Live the life you deserve and stand up for what's right. Your future will be shaped by your courage to start over. Even though the path may be difficult and the journey may be lengthy, keep in mind that you are not required to accept what is presented to you. You have the option to create something better that is in line with your heart, your truth, and your beliefs. Your idea that you deserve the life you desire is the only thing preventing you from living it. Even when it seems impossible, keep going, because the most satisfying successes ultimately result from the most difficult struggles. Regardless of where you're coming from, you have the ability to transform your life.